Hello. This is WP Product Talk, the place where every week we interview an experienced WordPress product owner on strategies, tips, experiences, failures, and successes of running a successful and thriving WordPress product business. I'm Zach Katz, founder of Trusted Login and Gravity Kit.
And I'm Matt Cromwell, co-founder of Give WP and Senior Director of Customer Experience at Stellar WP.
And today's topic is unlocking the genie of WordPress product innovation.
I had a little fun with that title. I was like, innovation is such, it's like a mystical thing, it's like, I wanted to like try to broaden our imaginations. And truthfully, in the WordPress space, we're all innovative. Like, I want to say up front, like, I think we're all innovative. We wouldn't be in WordPress if we weren't. But sometimes there's like this special something that a product has that you're like, oh man, that one's going to take off. Like this one's going to really do it. And being able to tap into that is hard. And sometimes from the outside looking in, sometimes it can look like luck or fortune. But as I've gotten to know different people over the years, often it's just a lot of hard work and being focused on like making sure that you're doing something unique and special. There is an art and a skill to it. So, and I don't feel like people talk about this enough. So I'm excited to talk about it personally.
Well, to talk about it with us today is our special guest, Ben Rittner.
Ben.
Hey.
Welcome, Ben. Thanks for being here, man. Can you introduce yourself to the world for us?
Yeah, I'm Ben Rittner. I am the founder of Cadence WP, and right now I work at Stellar, mostly working on Cadence and doing a little bit of thought innovation, I guess, inside of all of Stellar.
Awesome.
Great.
Thanks.
And for those of you who are in the live chat, please feel free to comment, and we will answer any questions that you have as they come up. You have open access to an innovative mind with Ben and also with us, I hope, to some extent.
Hopefully a little bit, more or less.
So
Nice.
I think this topic is so important for product owners because it's so easy to not innovate, to not try to push the envelope of what's possible, what's expected, what is a standard procedure. And it's easy to say, well, okay, I'm going to just like keep on iterating and hopefully my product will get better without making any waves, without changing any paradigms. And it's easy to get comfortable and not dedicate time or money to shaking things up and trying something new. So I think innovation is really a separate thing from development and product iteration.
Yeah. Ben, how do you think about the subject of innovation? Like, even as you look back on like your success with Cadence, do you think that like it was because Cadence was innovative, or what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big topic. I think like my number one thing I would say is like more than being a genius, it's listening to your users, because there is a part of it where it's like users don't always have it right, and you need to be like, no, let me show you the way. But I would say the biggest successes has come from like actually paying attention to the feedback and being like willing to go back and go, okay, we did this wrong. Let's figure this out.
Yeah.
And so that, and then being your own customer is huge. I still manage quite a few sites on the side, don't get paid for it, just because I want to make sure I'm still a customer of my own products. And I'm still thinking in that mindset, and I'm still using the products and going, what's my pain points? What do I wish I could do? What's awkward about this? And that's hard to do when you're in it, because like I know where everything lives and I know where the settings lives because I put them there. So you've got to like step back a little bit on your own stuff. But I think in large part, Cadence, and if you look at like why was it successful, what happened, I put it into like the first product we made. I just did everything that I wanted it to have, and I was a freelancer, and so I created what I wanted. And invention is one thing. Like if you're going to create an entirely new experience, that takes a huge amount of risk, a huge amount of like you're gonna have to teach customers an experience that they're not used to. That's really hard to do. Innovate is there's this wonderful line of like, how do I make something that feels like it should be here, but is something completely new at the same time? And there's always that like give and take of like, I've got to try to use, because we're all working in WordPress, so I've got to try to use Core's system to try to create a much better experience while not departing so far from Core that it feels like a brand new experience. And that's not to say that there's not great products that have created a brand new experience. I mean, Elementor is one that's like, hey, it's taken off, it's huge, and it's had a very successful time as being the #1 page builder because it created a new experience that ended up being something that people were like, hey, this feels a lot better to me than the other editor. And I think that's not to say, just to say you can't, there's no one rule, but getting customer feedback and getting feedback in general, because you don't know what your blind spots are. And you will find,
That's what I want to lean in on a little bit, because I've talked with you enough to know that like I knew that listening to the customer was going to be your answer. Or a big part of your answer.
It's always the answer.
And it's true. I want to say up front, that's true. Like, but the art of it is taking what your users are saying and turning it into a solution. And that, I think, is where, because I think a lot of folks really do listen. They listen a lot, or they rise up organically, like you did. And a lot of our experiences are, I'm building a site. Whenever I wanted to do X, it sucked. So I made something that solved that problem. And I'm my own customer. And then you start listening to other people that are like, oh, I solved it in a totally different way. And you start doing that kind of thing. But the ability to hear what they want or what they're saying they need and turning it into something functional, I think that's the magic that's hard to unlock. Zach, what do you think? Does that resonate with you, or is that the place that you're trying to lean in on?
When I hear customers trying to accomplish things that aren't currently possible or aren't currently easy, and I'm stuck in the WordPress paradigm, I think to myself, well, what other products in the world do this? Not just in WordPress, and how do they solve it? And I find myself realizing how frequently WordPress itself is the limiting factor, like the data structure, the paradigms that WordPress has for like the way that you interact with the admin. And the innovation that I feel comes into WordPress often exists and has existed for years outside of WordPress. So I think that when trying to solve a problem, when trying to innovate, look outside of WordPress and ask yourself, if customers are having those same problems outside of WordPress, how are those being solved by whom, and what could we take for, like, how can we integrate that learning into WordPress?
Totally. Ben, what would you say? How would you answer, like, how did you take customer feedback and turn it into a product, essentially? Like, there's something in between there. There's like listening to your customer and then shipping something that actually solves their need. And this is the gap we're trying to talk into a little bit. What's happening in there? What do you do in that space?
Yeah. I mean, there's always the temptation to overbuild or overcome, like make something too complex, because you just create settings for every single possible scenario. And so like, I think there's the product strategy of like, you need to take the customer feedback and put that into strategy for like, okay, understand who your customers are and who your market is. Like if you're listening to a customer that's on a fringe part of your market, you need to really balance what they're saying, but then coming up with a strategy for how this can be something that is easily taught and relatable across. Obviously, you get into a lot of things with like UI, and like that's so important as far as like the experience that the user's having with your product, where like you can create something that fulfills a need, but it's such a bad user experience to like work with, that it's not going to be successful. So like innovation is just part of the puzzle. Like you've got to be able to put all of the pieces together to actually go to from like here's how I want to do something, and then here's what the end product is going to be.
Yeah. Yep. Let's focus in a little bit on the question. How we kick off most of these conversations is always about why the subject is so important. And I think like focusing on essentially what happens to products that don't have good product strategy, for example, or products that aren't particularly innovative. Like in some way, I feel like the answer to this question is why is this so important? Is like, what are the consequences of not taking innovation seriously? Zach, what's your take?
You know, there's always a tension because when Gravity View, for example, launched, it was, I think, innovative in a way. It was a page builder for Gravity Forms data. That's really cool. And we're currently, we've been for a few years now thinking like, what's next? What do we do next? And that process involves a lot of understanding customer use cases, taking some time looking at other products. If we don't innovate, Gravity View is going to eventually decline. That's the nature of products. They have a natural rise and fall, and if you don't continue to innovate, you will end up, your product will die. So one needs to continue to innovate to move past the current thing that's possible, because the world is always moving forward. And of course, the current innovation area that people are interested in right now is AI. So like, what are the available innovative methods of dealing with form data with AI? So that's a lot of what we've been thinking about. How do we inside WordPress deal with that, or do we have to go outside WordPress to deal with that? Like so innovate or die is my takeaway, because there's no stasis.
Sure.
There's no stasis. You can't just launch a product and say, well, it's done, because products are never done. Customer needs are never solved fully. They always evolve. They always so you need to evolve with them, and that requires innovating at some points when the current, and I've said the word a lot today, but the current paradigm shifts enough that your solution to this other problem no longer is as meaningful to your customers. You need to solve the next problem they're about to have.
Yeah. So having a competitive advantage essentially is one aspect, like of,
or staying relevant. Not even an advantage, just like who somebody out there is building something that will compete with us. We need to do that as well. We need to, Apple released the iPhone that cannibalized the iPod. The iPod was already market dominant, but then the iPhone ate its own product. So like, we need to cannibalize our own products continuously. Otherwise somebody else will.
Yeah. Ben, what's your take? Why is this so important for product owners?
Yeah, I think for product owners, for me and even my history, like the temptation is you just get into like, you get a little bit of success and you get into the focus so much on like what you're currently doing and just adding like, I remember there being a time where like every single feature request, I was like, I got to figure this out. I mean, we get hundreds, like, and it was always just like, you can get so tied into the day-to-day that you forget to sit back and go, I probably need to start working on what I'm going to be promoting 2 years from now. Like at least in terms of strategy and thinking about it and giving yourself as a product owner, like your life is busy. It's crazy. The support, the bug fixes, all the things will prevent you from sitting down and doing the market research and like really thinking about like, what is the next phase of this? What is this going to look like in 2 years? Is this going to be even a product in 2 years? And if it's not, what's my next product? Like really thinking through where you go from here long term brings about the best innovation in my mind.
And what's your process for that? Do you put something on the calendar that says like long-term planning? How do you break it down from here's where we are, here's where we might be going in the future? Like, walk us through that.
Probably for me, what forces my hand a little bit is marketing coming to me and being like, what are we doing? Which is nice, because then I'm like, I gotta sit down and think about this. But yeah, I think there's a part of it like where you've just got to be in the know. You got to invest the time to be in the know. You need to know what's going on with AI. You need, like, there's all these things that you just like, you have to say, like, it's a lot of noise, but I got to consume it because I need to know where the market's at. I need to know what's happening in WordPress core. I need to know like what the future is for that. Thus, I invest the time in reading, like looking at the GitHub tickets for Gutenberg or whatever, like really trying to invest into understanding where things are at right now, and then doing the, like, taking the time to read the articles about what's coming. And then, if you're a product owner, your mind's probably already going. If you're aware of what's happening, your mind is already like, well, how could that, like, you won't be able to stop that part of like, what am I going to do next if now that I know this? At least I can't. I'm like, just wish I could turn it off sometimes and be like, it's okay, like take a break. Cause I'm like, oh man, I need to develop this. There's like a million things that I'm like, man, I just wish I could be working on that right now.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
You have to go through the steps of like, I'm in this right now. I got to make sure this gets to completion, but still be planning for that future stuff. So for me, the biggest thing is just being aware of what's going on, and then my brain kind of takes over.
Yeah. I think on my side, when it comes to like why product owners have to be innovating, it does have a lot to do with what Zach was saying in terms of like relevance for the and a combination of what Ben said too, relevance with an eye towards your next 2 to 3 years of relevance. Essentially, if you're not looking for what your market is doing right now and where it's going, there's going to be something disruptive that happens over the next 2 to 3 years that you can't anticipate, that you don't know exactly what it's going to be and how it's going to impact your audience. But if you're reading the tea leaves, if you're paying attention to the area in which your product exists, and constantly thinking of ways to solve the problems that arise there, then then you're able to stay relevant through those disruptive times. Like I every once in a while I'll have a product owner come and say, "Hey, I'm really working on this one thing. I think it's going to be cool." One example recently is there's a lot of AI bots coming up a lot, chat bots and things like that. They're popping up everywhere. I've kind of been a little bit of a Debbie Downer on it in terms of saying I actually don't think that those are going to be products in the long run. I think that we're going to have AI chatbots in ways that is so much more permeable throughout our whole ecosystem in a way that like email is. Like I actually think that those things are going to become so accessible and so easy that people aren't going to want to pay a whole bunch of money for them all the time. In the same way that we don't really pay for email anymore. But it's all about being able to pay attention and see. I don't know if I'm right about that, but I'm concerned that I don't want the trends of today's AI to dictate what's going to happen 2 to 3 years from now. I think it's going to look a lot different eventually. So long-term relevance is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and how do you innovate in a world where our entire industry is seismically shifting underneath our feet, and WordPress is just seemingly unfazed by it? Like Matt said, learn AI. Matt Mullenweg said, learn AI deeply. But other than a Jetpack AI block, I'm not sure exactly what is happening for WordPress to like shift with this change. So, like Ben, what do you think is if you were to read the future, to look into the future of WordPress, and you were thinking as a Cadence product manager, like how are you willing to share, like what are you doing for innovation and moving forward? If you're not able to share, that's of course okay.
Oh no, for sure. I think on one hand, the web moves fast, customers don't move as fast, and you can get so caught up in like trying to be so current that you'll leave your customers behind. And like I can tell you, we launched Cadence blocks. before the Gutenberg editor was inside of WordPress core. So it was like, I wanted to be really, really early. Like we put it out and it was like the first version of Cadence blocks required you to install the Gutenberg plugin because it wasn't part of core. And I thought once it's in core, man, our customer base, like our user base is just going to explode. And it didn't for a whole year. I mean, it took a whole year of it being in core before people even started to look at it in a real way. And some of that has to do with, like, we could go back and say like, hey, it was too early, we shouldn't have put it in, it was rushed, whatever. There's certainly some of that, but there's also like, no one's sitting there waiting for your update so they can go and build a website. Like they're doing it on their time and not your time, and they're not going to migrate from one system to another on your time. So I think on one hand, like there is a little bit of like pressure of like, I've got to say super relevant, and like, what are you doing to stay relevant? What are you doing to like that? You need to recognize like, I have customers or users that I want to make sure I'm like taking them along on this trip. And really like I'm suggesting what I think is the best method for doing stuff. As far as like when I look into the future of things and AI, I think we are going to, we are going to be doing a lot more of prompt writing, if you will, like telling the AI, hey, I want this, and seeing it happen. And so, lots of experiments on our end. We have an AI like product, if you will, or add-on to our blocks plugin coming out soon. AI starter templates is coming out soon. But more than that, the ability
we should lean in on that though. We should lean in on Cadence AI a little bit. And
Sure.
in terms of like, everybody is going crazy trying to push out AI stuff really quick. And Cadence AI is taking its time. And I think that that's important because like you're being really strategic in the way that you're leveraging AI. And so I think we should lean in on that a little bit.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like on one hand, we could just push out a block to say like prompt, you hear prompt and it'll write for you. And that's like fine, but we can all do that with Grammarly or just go, whatever. What we were trying to do is figure out a way to say, let's rely less on prompts. Let's rely less on what the user has to put in to get out, and more about, we're going to say you need an about section for your website. So we're going to create the prompt for that. We're going to seed that prompt with your data. And then we're not just going to ask for text back. We're going to create layouts that use our blocks to actually allow you to say, I need an about section, and here's a whole page, or here's a section for that about page that has images and has the whole thing designed and laid out versus just a bunch of text, because it's just really not very helpful to ask an AI for like text, and then you still have a white page with text, and you're like, wow, now what do I do?
Exactly. Yeah.
This enabled.
That's exactly what I was leaning in on, is because like there's so many ways in which some folks I feel like are chasing AI as if AI is the thing that they want to build something that's AI related. It's an AI product or whatever. But I feel like what you're doing is you're listening to your customers. Like your customers don't need a block that gives them ability to do a prompt. What they want is an easier way to build websites, an easier way to build out a layout. And so your product isn't an AI. You're leveraging AI to serve the customer. And you're leveraging it in a way that is intuitive and straightforward and almost seamless. Like if the whole focus is on, oh, look, it's outputting all this cool stuff that I didn't expect it to output. Like that's fun, but that's what ChatGPT does. Like instead, it's a feature, but it's not the benefit. The benefit is the page that's being built and how it benefits the customer more. And I think that's a little bit of the magic is not thinking of not being so focused on, I could build that feature. That's a cool feature. I could build that feature. Nobody really cares about this feature. What they care about is whether or not it solves their problem or not, whether it serves their needs or not, and whether it does that in a way that's actually intuitive. I don't know. I kind of got disruptive there, but like Zach, am I making sense? I don't know.
Yeah, and there's always a balance between can we do this and is it the right time to do this? Um,
Mm,
and for example, Gravity Forms collects a ton of data. Like, you submit a form, you submit data. Gravity Kit products allow you to analyze that data, export, manipulate it, do all sorts of stuff. Um, but writing a prompt to try to to try to have somebody come up with the words that describe what they're trying to do in a way that results in the output, we're not there yet.
mm,
It's not consistent enough. It's not good enough. I would want to have a conversation with Gravity Kit product that says, like, okay, make me a chart that shows this. No, that's not right. Can you have another line that shows this other thing? And just have a natural language experience. And we are not there yet, and certainly not on a self-hosted WordPress website without some sort of other connection. And another connection, the pricing models don't necessarily match up. So we have to like innovate on the product itself, but the pricing models to match the new realities if we aren't able to self-host these AI things. So, hey, maybe the timing's not right yet. Let's sit back and see. So
yeah.
I think the right time to innovate, if you innovate too early, you're ahead of the curve and nobody knows for a year until Gutenberg is built into core. And then you finally, and like a year after that, is finally when people are ready. So like the early adopters isn't what you necessarily always want to optimize for.
Yep, that's a good one. I like that
Yeah.
dichotomy there because the difference between like the rush and the excitement that right at when something is new versus what is actually going to be really highly sought after for years into the future. There is a difference there for sure.
Yeah. I
Um,
would say the one caveat to that is don't do that. Don't use that excuse to not go learn. So even if you
Right.
know you're not going to publish a product, go and make sure you could. Like, because it'll
Yes.
open up it'll really tell you, like, really inform you as to when you should. And it'll also
mm,
really help you thinking about how can I use this? Because a lot of people aren't diving into like all the different ways in which you can prompt an AI or get something back or all of that. Like, you should try to stay in on it, even if you're like, I know I'm not going to use that. Being aware of how the whole thing works and like keeping up with as it's innovating will help you know when and what to use.
yep, that's a good point. Definitely, when I was first interacting with AI, I started like looking everywhere. I like jumped into Mid Journey and I started looking into different tools and whatnot. I worked a lot with the I'm going to forget agents. With agents, I loaded one up locally and started trying to see how that might research how to do a whole bunch of stuff for me. It did definitely open up my mind to all kinds of possibilities and potential for sure. That's a really good encouragement for sure. I do want to talk a little bit. We kind of like merged organically into story time, I think, talking about Cadence AI a little bit. Want to hear more about Gravity Kit innovations as well. And I on the give side of things, like I've told this story quite a few times. We really kind of hit the market at a spot where essentially everyone was understanding that you could do payments online for sure. And if you were a nonprofit organization, you ended up using WooCommerce, but then you had to go through a cart and a checkout and things like that. Or you had to use even Gravity Forms. But payments in Gravity Forms at that time were not super awesome, honestly. And plus, it didn't have a lot of great ways to manage the actual user accounts or users that got submitted through the form. There wasn't like a way to see a specific user across multiple form entries and things like that. So there were just some limitations there. And yet we knew that nonprofits wanted to do online fundraising and they didn't want to deal with a cart. They didn't want to like hack the system to exclude taxes. They didn't want to have everything be called a product and everybody to be called customers. And they didn't want to just use a form. And so there was this spot in between those two things that was kind of a big obvious spot. And Devin and I noticed it because we built websites for nonprofits, and we were like, every time we have to do it, it sucked. So Let's solve that problem for sure. But what kept us ahead of the game was definitely not that we found that hole. It's that once we filled that hole, we had a bunch of people telling us exactly how they do fundraising, and how our tool could be done differently to help them in what they were doing, and being able to fundraise more effectively online. And it did become a whole system continually of like listening to customer feedback and trying to fill those needs, and listening to customer feedback again and trying to fill those needs. Our biggest, most recent innovation, I would say, is our peer-to-peer add-on, because again, when we first started peer-to-peer campaigns online, like you have to think of like Mary G. Coleman races and things like that, like big giant fundraisers that have like 10,000 people running, and you're built out into teams and things like that. These were always only these big elite nonprofit events. And so the software that was created for those events cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. And so smaller nonprofits that wanted to do big races like that couldn't afford to do that ever. So they did not do those types of fundraisers. But we're like, our tagline is democratizing generosity. So like, how can we help those kinds of folks to be able to have that kind of generosity option too? So peer-to-peer was built in order to enable that. And that, again, was a big hole in the market at the time. And so in many ways, I really find that holes in the markets are often the easiest place to be innovative, because it's a hole. Like, there's nothing there at the moment. No, there might be folks who are doing that at a really large scale, but who's doing that at a more accessible scale for smaller folks? Or another way to think about it is just simply like, there are unmet needs in the nonprofit space right now. Personally, on the give side, on the fundraising side, like, I really want to see a lot better donor management systems. We do a lot with online fundraising, and we do have some basic donor management built into Give, but there's nobody really at the moment who's doing it for the small to medium-sized nonprofits in a way that's really, really actionable. There's a couple of folks, a couple of SaaSes that do okay. There's a couple WordPress plugins, Groundhog in particular, Fluent CRM, that can be used for those purposes as well. But really, like, nailing that market, I think, is challenging, and not really done particularly well at the moment. So that's where I've had success, is identifying the holes and trying to stopgap them as much as I can. So.
Yeah, and the pressure to innovate is that we've been talking about innovation, and Matt, you just gave a lot of examples of iteration, which feel innovative because they are not currently met in the space. I don't think we need to innovate.
Here we go.
In the way that it's this lofty idea of like, there needs to be this apple plucked from a tree of perfect product knowledge. I think that what is innovative is iterating in the right direction, and iterating in a way that solves problems that we haven't, that in ways that haven't been solved before. So a lot of what we're going to be working on, and we currently are working on, is one problem that we have with the Gravity Forms data structure, with the WordPress data structure, is the concept of objects and relationships between objects. And that, like, okay, so you have a donor object, those have certain properties. And like, if you go into Salesforce and you have a donor management system, you have an object called donor. And you have all these relationships you can structure in a way that makes sense, because you can configure this. And there are plugins in WordPress that do this, and they are not built into every website. And so, like, sometimes innovation is just asking yourself, does it need to be this way? It's currently, everything is laid out flat. What if we twisted it on its side, pulled it into 3 dimensions, looked at it from another angle, and said, like, oh, there's a solution that means that we have to change this, this, and this. Well, that is innovation, by just looking at it from a different angle and trying to figure out what needs to change for this to work. I think that's iteration and innovation, just like combined in one.
I'm trying to read between the lines a little bit of what you're saying. I hear exactly what you're saying in terms of objects and data and things like that. I'm trying to translate that into what that looks like for Gravity Kit. Well, be a little bit more explicit. Come on, give our
Well,
audience. What are you working on?
I think everybody has the same question. Like, everybody has data. Everybody wants to communicate. Everybody wants reports. Everybody wants this. Everybody wants
Yeah,
that. It,
yeah,
and I don't run a CRM. You don't run a CRM. Uh, like, how do we make the everything app but have it feel like it's only for our customers, in the sense that it's only what they need and nothing more. It's not extraneous. It's not dead weight.
mm, mm,
Do we is innovative? Does innovation mean having a good partnership with Fluent CRM or Groundhog and finding out where that overlaps, and we can,
mm,
an innovative partnership with a deep integration? Like,
mm.
I think innovation doesn't mean anything if the customers keep on having to figure out what the solutions are. And and yet we live in an ecosystem in WordPress where all we present is more options to our customers. So, like,
Yeah,
it's hard to just, innovation could be focus. Like,
mm,
we are going to do this, and do it really well, and be a cog in the machine of our customers' WordPress installation, instead of trying to be
yeah.
everything and be like so with everything.
You reminded me of a topic we said we might touch on a little bit. There's a product out there right now called Ollie that's trying to get into the theme repository and having some trouble because they're innovating in a very iterative way. Like, we all know exactly what onboarding is, and all know exactly what a theme is, and Mike McAllister is trying to pair those things together as a theme. And the restrictions, the guidelines of the theme repository are kind of making it difficult to distribute that theme on that platform, which, like, is a struggle. Like, is it the responsibility of the theme repository to allow innovation? No, it's not their job. That's not important to them. But if Mike doesn't get it on there, he's going to distribute it somewhere else. There's probably going to be a lot less distribution there. Ben, without putting you too much on the spot as a theme yourself and as a potential Ollie competitor, what's your take on, like, how this is all going down for Mike? Is .org like restricting innovation?
Yeah. I mean, I would say one of my opinion is that .org defined themes in a way that they wanted themes to work. Customers use themes in a completely different way. And that is,
you don't say.
like, the way that users think about themes is so different from what WordPress org wants users to think about themes that there has always been a massive disconnect as to what theme authors want to put in their themes and what the .org won't allow. And that's been true since I got into this in 2011. Like, it's every time I mean, I vowed after I pushed the Cadence theme, I was like, never again will I go through the theme review process, because it's two different, completely different things of, like, what we're trying to create what customers want, and you're trying to say a theme is this, and it's just not what customers or users think a theme is. And so there's workarounds, and I don't know what will happen with Ollie. In the end, all the major themes, as soon as you install them, they say, hey, you want this plugin? Because it's going to make your life a million times better, because that's where we put the onboarding or the ability to start with demo content or all of that, or like the help you through this process of starting with this theme. And I would love it if we started looking at themes like users look at themes. The problem I see is that full site editing has gone even more away from the way that users think about themes into this direction of, like, themes are so much more of a skin on what you're doing than ever before as we
Yeah.
move into full site editing. And so I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens in terms of like that, with full site editing, there's just a whole lot less that a theme can do or be to an end user. I would almost push, and this would be like very different, but I would almost push for core to have a base theme and then create a marketplace where we can call them themes or we can call them something else, where you can install your foundation package that could be a plugin, because that's, in terms of data structure and all that, but is what the user wants. What they want is, I need to get started with my site. I know that the layout and how this is going to work, and even the whole design system and everything is important to like getting started. Right now, we got to do a theme and a plugin basically everywhere. And I would love for that to switch. I think if Core created a full site editing theme that was vanilla enough, that could be the true default theme. You could keep releasing your like skins every year, but make a true default theme and then allow an interface for exploring. Do I want traditional themes? Do I want block-based themes? Or do I want a whatever that new word is?
Yeah, pattern. Yeah. I know what you mean. The thing that I think is so crazy about the Ollie situation is that, like, I think full site editing is trying to be innovative, and in some ways, maybe it is. Maybe full site editing is innovative. It's definitely the future in one form or another. But every time I've tried to experience full site editing, it's been extremely clunky just to get in the first place. Like I've always basically discovered it on accident to date. And then I saw people talking about Ollie, and I was like, I'll see what this excitement is about. And literally, it introduced me to full site editing in a way that I didn't know existed because of the onboarding. And so Ollie's innovation actually amplified the full site editing innovation in a way that I felt like made a lot more sense. And it does WordPress core a big service in that way. And I'm just like, they should make an exception in this case. If this is the rule, they should make an exception. Honestly, but the other thing that we should all learn from it is like just that innovation can be hampered by outside forces in one way or another. There's a lot of ways in which this is not a unique situation. We can try to innovate in different ways, and there could be other things that prevent us from doing what we want to do in a way that's really effective and and helpful. And it just kind of like is a frustrating aspect when we find out that our platform, WordPress itself, ends up being the thing that prevents innovation. Even like our ability to inform our users about updates or to inform our users about security vulnerabilities, things like this. The platform itself is actually the thing that prevents us from being able to do that at a effective scale.
And that's a great point, because WordPress.org, when you distribute through them, you agree not to innovate at a certain level. I'm sorry, it's true. You say, I agree not to innovate in these places, and I can't move the ball forward because I agree to the guidelines. Well, the guidelines for being a theme is you're only a theme, and you can't provide additional functionality beyond being a theme. Well, what does that even mean? Like, it's the experience that matters. Sorry, you're on WordPress.org. So as a product owner, I'd say distribute it on your own website. Like, you have the relationship with the customer. Even if it's free, spin up your own website and distribute on your own website that you control. And maybe do a light version on .org that is not as good. But I would not rely on .org for my product business, because they don't have the same goals as you do.
Interesting. That's a statement. I've had this conversation. I don't know if you and I have had this conversation before, but it's a good one. People are definitely getting a lot more skeptical about the the dependence on .org as a whole. This is a rabbit hole. We're going to have to do this in another show.
So Matt, what is your best advice for new product owners when it comes to innovation?
Good pivot. Good job. Don't rely on. I'm just kidding. My best advice when it comes to innovation, innovate. That's the best advice. I'm still like cycling in my mind. Hold on. I really think in general for new folks, in many ways, the most important thing you can do is just to keep doubling down on what you're doing today and don't get distracted by all the trends. Like in some ways, I do think that just doing the core important work that made you who you are is probably the most innovative thing you can do, because it's so easy to get spun off by like, oh, check out all the Bitcoin stuff that's happening, which isn't anymore. Or check out all the AI stuff, which has definitely changed severely in a very short amount of time. Those types of things can be lures and sound and feel like innovation, but really probably pushing out your next big release that just does the core stuff is probably a lot more innovative to your customer than chasing a big trend. So I guess my best fight is maybe don't innovate as much. Maybe I'm being a little anti, but yeah, that's my
So Matt, you think I should shut down the Gravity NFT project I've been working on?
Definitely.
Darn it. So my best advice for new product owners is to listen to your nagging suspicion that things could be way better. Like, okay, how many clicks does it take to do something is a good metric for like how broken is this system. How many settings are there that are in between the starting point and the end goal? And how many things do you need to know to get from here to there? And how error prone is it? Like, listen to yourself. Like Ben was saying, when you're using your own product, listen to yourself when you say, like, this isn't very good, this isn't good enough, how can it be better? And there's one method that's part of a book, and I forget the name of the book, but it's called the How Might We method. And so you look at a problem and you start putting sticky notes up on a wall, and the sticky notes all have the HMW, how might we? So how might we solve this problem? How might we solve that problem? And the problem, like, how might we make it so that no configuration is needed for my product? That's a question that unlocks brainstorming, that can unlock, that can turn that thing, like I was talking about, turn that problem around, look at it from another angle, and maybe, just maybe, you'll find the innovation you need.
That's awesome. Nice. Ben, I'm excited for your best advice.
Yeah, I mean, because you're saying best, I feel like I have to go back to, like, you've got to listen to your customers. And I think one thing that is like really hard to watch, but like actually watch your customers experiencing your product.
Oh, it's dreadful. It's the worst. And it's the
worst.
only thing. Yeah.
But it's very, it sounds like it's also the best.
It's the best because it will inform you the most as to, like, oh, I've been thinking about this as being straightforward in a way that it's just not for the end user. And now I need to think about how to position things, move things, organize things, talk about things, all of it. It's the thing that will get your mind thinking about, how can I go beyond, outside of, like, how can I solve this for this user in a way that's actually going to make it intuitive? And I think if you can get to intuitive with your stuff, that's where it can be really powerful and really a great product.
Nice.
Some good advice. So, Matt, what's going on next week on the podcast? Oh, I believe Matt might have frozen. So I will be Matt for a second, and I'll say that next week we're going to discuss achieving business goals through enhanced customer experience in WordPress with our special guest, Leslie Sim of Newsletter Glue. And thanks again, Ben, for joining us. You've been a wonderful guest, and I really liked this conversation.
And thanks for having me.
And thanks to Post Status for being our staging area. And if you are enjoying these shows, please do us a favor and hit like, subscribe, share it with your friends, subscribe to the RSS podcast feed in your favorite podcast player. Sign up for our newsletters, all this stuff. We really appreciate that you follow us, and we hope to see you next week. Thanks, everybody.